to everyone. Okay, so hope everybody is fine today. So we are going to finish up our topic on class diagram. So today's lecture will cover that. We will look at how to refine our class diagram and our sequence diagram during design phase. So we will finish off that slide for topic. It is topic for week 8, 9, and 10. So we are now actually in week 9. So maybe we will cover a new topic next week, right? So we finish off this topic today, and then after that we still want to discuss our PBL 2 because like I mentioned before last week, I told you that we need to finish off by this week, okay? So that you can concentrate on the presentation, because each PBL we have 5% presentation marks. That is, I asked you to prepare video for PBL 1. So I think we will continue on with the video presentation. Maybe for the final presentation we will do it using WebEx. Okay. So so I hope those groups that already completed the sequence diagram and the class diagram, you can start to prepare the presentation slides and recordings. Okay, prepare the video. I will create the link to upload. But there are still some groups that yet to show me the sequence diagram, right? And also most of the group I didn't see your class diagram yet, combined class diagram. Okay, so we have to allocate some time to check that, because it's very important that you complete your PBL correctly, because PBL are giving you almost 70% of your total marks for the STID 3024 class. So you have to give more attention to your PBL. You have to work in group. Some groups I feel like you are working alone, right? Because your group members diagram is good, but your diagram is not good. That means you are not discussing among your group members to check each other's diagram and to correct them. So usually you have to do that, because when we are working as a group, it's a group submission. So if, for example, let's say half of your diagrams are good and half are not good, so you will get half of the marks, right? All of you will get half of the marks. So you have to work together to ensure that all your diagrams are correct. So that's why I'm telling you, when you work as a group, it doesn't mean that you divide your work and then when you submit, I will mark based on who did what. No, right? I will mark as a group. So it should be a group work. Should be you should have collaboration, discussion, checking each other, right? To ensure that your group work submitted is the complete and correct for the whole diagram. Okay, so we will go back to PBL later. Now let's start the class, the lecture for topic class diagram. We want to finish off the design part. I'm going to share the slide. Okay, we are still using this slide. And as you can see, this slide actually is for week 8 until 10. But we will finish it today, week 9. And week 10 we will do, most probably we will do a state diagram, or maybe we will do interface design first, right? Because you need to design an interface for your PBL3. So like I said, PBL3 is coming. So you have to finish off PBL2 as soon as possible. So don't delay. Okay, so we have covered all these slides. We have covered analysis class diagram, and we are now going to do this one, evolving analysis models into design models. And then we are going to look at how does the design interaction diagram looks like, and how does the design class diagram looks like. Okay. So as you can see, so far we have covered only one point, right? However, these 3 points, they are not that much. We are just going to refine what we have created. So let's go directly to that. Okay, so this is the topic for today, evolving the analysis models into design models. Okay, so we are not going to draw a new diagram when we move from analysis phase to design phase. Usually, if you are not doing object-oriented analysis and design, if you are doing structured analysis and design, you will have different diagrams to draw in design phase. Okay, for example, like flow chart, structure chart, and so on. But for our object-oriented analysis, most of the diagram we have drawn, right? We have our interaction diagrams like sequence diagram and communication diagram. And we also have our class diagram already drawn during analysis phase. So how to evolve them into design models? So what should we do to refine them? Okay. So that's what we are going to discuss. So the purpose of the analysis phase is to figure out what the business needs, right? So system analysis defined in the functional requirements were defined without considering the non-functional requirements. So remember when we did our PBL1, we list out all the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements. But when we model our use case, we concentrated on only the functional requirements. So why? Why? Because non-functional requirements are more about the how, right? How the system will operate, where does the system operate, what security measures that we need, what cultural and political measures that we need to include. Those are all non-functional requirements. So we did not do any modeling on the non-functional requirements. So now is the time to model those non-functional requirements, okay, such as performance and system environment issues. Therefore, in system design, system analysts define the functional and non-functional requirements. Okay. So as a result, the major activity that takes place during the design phase is evolving the set of analysis representations into design representations. So that's what happened during design phase. We take back all the diagram and we inject in how in it, right? So when evolving the analysis model into design model, several diagrams have to be refined by adding system environment or solution domain details. Okay, so what are those UML diagrams that we have to refine? Okay, one of it is design interaction diagram. So we are not going to refine use case diagram because use case diagram is for the user to understand what are the functions. We are going to refine the interaction diagram, which is the sequence and the communication. Right, so design interaction diagram. During design phase, the interaction diagrams will be refined based on the following tasks. So what we do is we map all the objects that we have identified into a class. Okay, and also we map all the messages into an operation. Okay. So these are the two things that we do in the design interaction diagram. So what do we mean by mapping an object to a class? Okay, so on the sequence diagram or communication diagram, we represent each box as an object, right? And I always ask you to do a colon and then name the class, right? So why I ask you to do that? Because our PBL2 submission, if you go back to our PBL materials, you would notice a sentence that's saying that all the diagrams must be in the design, right? So let me go back to show you what I mean. Maybe you have forgotten about this. Let me go back to show you. Can you see the you online learning? Okay. Materials for PBL2. If you click on the materials, you will have the yeah. So you have all the documents, right? Let's check the entry documents or student material. I can't remember which one, but I think it's the entry document. Okay, so in the entry documents of your PBL2 documents, you can see that as a guideline to the developer, all the diagrams must be transformed from analysis phase to design phase by refinement process, right? So this is what is required by you to when you submit the PBL2, you have to make sure that all the diagrams are in the design phase, right? So when you draw your sequence diagram, we go back to our slide. When you draw your sequence diagram, I already asked you to put in the colon and the class name, right? So usually in the analysis phase, we just can just write down the object, right? But for the design phase, we have to mention what is the class, which object does this class belong to, which class does the object belong to. For example, if you have written Joe as the object in your analysis sequence diagram. So you have to identify Joe is who, from which class. Joe is a user, or Joe is an admin, or Joe is a customer, right? You have to identify the class. So that's I think most of the groups have already done that, right? So when I see usually the comments that I give you when I check your sequence diagram, you have only object name. So please put colon and class name. Sometimes the object and the class name are same, right? Because for example, like screen, we have only one screen, right? We don't have a lot of like customer. We might have Joe, Mary, and so on. We have a lot of instances, but for screen or interface, we might only have one interface, unless it is interface like for pop-up message or error messages. We might have two or three instances of the same class. So that's why the name are sometimes same for controller and so on. But for customer, for actors, normally we will have different objects. And for entity also, we will have, for example, product. If you have product information, you might have product A, product B, and so on. So you have to name the object and the class. Okay, so most of us for PBL2 we have already done this. So that is one thing that we have to consider when we map our analysis sequence diagram into design sequence diagram. So once you have mapped the object to a class, then the class name will appear with the object name on the diagram, and it is preceded by a colon, right? So if you have defined the class, so the object colon class. Okay, is that clear? Okay, let's move on. Okay, next is the how to map the messages to an operation. Okay, so in the analysis part, we just mentioned the message, like open account, click, enter ID and password. Those are messages in the form of phrases that we have wrote it down during analysis phase. So most of them are not in the form of operations of a class, right? So here we have an example where we have a ATM screen as the object, and also the name of the class is also ATM screen. And we have account as the object and account as the class. And there is a message from the ATM screen to the account saying that we have to open account. Okay. Technically, this one, as I always mention during the comments, screen should not directly send message to an entity. So this one looks like an entity because there's no controller, there's no manager. So this one should be ATM manager. Okay, so ATM manager can invoke the entity. So open account is the message. So how to transform this into a design message for design operation? So usually when we transform it into this design operation, there would be a open bracket and close bracket. Okay, so this shows that our message has been transformed into an operation. Okay, so this one you have to check whether you have done this or not, right? In your messages, ensure that all the messages are in that design phase. I think I forgot to mention to you about this before during analysis or during PBL2 checking. Okay, so But not all messages can be transformed into operations, right? So there are some special cases where the message does not become an operation. For example, when the customer must enter PIN number to open his account before requesting any transaction. So this entering the PIN number is not an operation. Why? Because it is done by the customer outside the system, right? It's a manual operation where the customer will key in using the keyboard, right, or the touch screen or anything, any devices to key in the PIN number. So this will never be an operation of the user, right? User interface class. It will most likely be a text field, right? Text field on a window. So therefore, this operation will not be transformed into operation. Okay? So as a conclusion, we can say that if the message is to or from an actor, right? So if it's to or from an actor that represent a physical person, the message is a statement of human procedure. So you will use it to put it inside your user manual, right? So all system must have user manual, right? How to use the system. So that will go into the user manual, but not as an operation, since it does not make sense to create an operations for human, right? So what do I mean by that? Let's look at an example. So this is the example of the ATM machine, right? So again, this ATM machine example need a controller. Here we have only screen, right? We have card reader screen, and we must have a controller to open Joe's account and so on. So what you can see here, you can see all these messages that are from the customer to the card reader are not changed into operation. There's no open and close bracket here. But the others inside the system all got open and close bracket, right? So what does that mean? That means this one, whatever interaction between the customer to the system, to the screen, right? Like accept card and enter PIN number would not be an operation for that class. So when we create a class called card reader, you will have only one operation to it. You will not put accept card as an operation. You will just put read card as the operation. Same goes to the ATM screen. So you will have initialize screen because it comes from the card reader to the screen. You will have from PIN as the operation for the class ATM screen, but you will not have enter PIN number as the operation because this is from the customer. Okay, and this is not an operation, so we do not put a open and close bracket here. So that means this is not an operation. This one are all operation and they belong to Joe's account. Do you understand? This one I think I already mentioned during checking of your sequence diagram. Most of the group I already mentioned that these are not, shouldn't be the part of the class. When you draw the class diagram, you will not take into consideration all this manual operation by the user. So is that clear? Okay, the message numbers are used only to show the flow in sequence diagram. They don't have any effect when we draw the class diagram, right? We are not going to put in the numbers when we draw the class diagram. So those numbers are used only to show the flow. Especially when we draw the communication diagram, we do not know when all are jumbled up like that, we do not know the flow. So we want to ensure the flow is known. So that's why we put the number. So they are not affected. Any more questions before we move on to the class diagram? Okay, no questions. Okay, let's move on. Okay, design class diagram. So what do we need to do for the class diagram? So there are some things that we need to add for the class diagram. One of it is the to show the data types, right? Especially for the attributes that we have created in the class diagram. So during the analysis phase, the class diagram will be refined based on the following tasks. First is to show the data types of the attributes such as string, integer, double, so on. Right? For example, here we have a class and we have two attributes. So in analysis phase, we just name the attribute, but for the design phase, we have to mention what is the data type. Our name is a string, price is double. So I have seen some of your class diagram and you already mentioned this. So that's good thing because you're already concerned about the design phase when you draw the class diagram. Okay, so that is for the operation. We have to mention the data types. For the attributes, we have to mention the data types. How about the operation? So for the operations, you have to show the return types and arguments of the operation, right? So what is the return types? So if you have, for example, operations that need data from another class, right? So you have to, for example, ID, user ID for checking, right? So that operations will have to be mentioned as an argument. So in the bracket, before it was empty, you can put in the argument that are passed, right? So that is for return types and arguments of the operation. Another thing is to add visibility. So visibility is the one that we mentioned about private, public, and protected, right? So I already mentioned about this, right? Private, public, and protected. Even you have experience about that, about the accessibility of the operations. Okay, so we add that. So that will complete our design class diagram. Okay, so for your PBL2, make sure all your diagrams are already in the design phase. So make sure all your operations in your sequence diagram has the bracket, right? Except the ones that are from the customer or the actor. And then also make sure all your class diagram already have data types and visibilities. Okay, hints and tips for creating a class diagram based on scenario. Okay, this one is actually tips that are given for creating a class diagram when in a quiz or exam. We will give you a problem statement or a scenario. So from that problem statement or scenario, you have to identify possible classes, right? Including its operations and its attributes and operations. So I will show you what I mean. Let me share you this one. Here is an example of scenario-based questions, right? Like draw a class diagram for the following scenario. Okay, please include the attribute mentioned for the classes. Include also the relationship between the classes, multiplicity, specifications, and other model elements that you find appropriate. So this is the scenario. A software training program is identified by a code and has a short descriptions that explains its goals. Each software training program is divided into training modules, and each module is described by module name and the appropriate practice time. Each module sometimes has prerequisite modules. So this is the scenario that are given. So if you are given this type of scenario, what to do, right? What are the first step to do? That's what I explained in the hints and tips in the slide. So from the problem statement or scenario, we have to identify possible classes, including its attributes and operations, right? So, and then from there, you have to add the relationship between the classes, choose a descriptive name to represent the relationship. You may add roles to each class if necessary, but maybe for those kind of questions, you do not need to add roles. This is important. You have to add multiplicity for each class. If necessary, add generalization, inheritance, compositions, or aggregations. So this is also important to identify whether the relationship can be transformed into generalization, right? Inheritance and generalization actually are same, and compositions or aggregations. Then once you have finished, you can review for completeness. So for that question just now, what is the class name for it? What's the class name? So you have to identify the classes. A software training program, right? So this one is the class, software training program. So software training program is the class, and the code, short description, these are all attributes for that class, right? So you have to draw a class for software training program, and then each software training program is divided into training modules. So training modules is another class which has relationship to the software training program. So what kind of relationship, you have to identify it, right? And the training modules is described by module name and appropriate practice time. So this is the two attributes for the training modules. This is for multiplicity. Each module sometimes has prerequisite modules, right? So this is another relationship between the training modules. So you can see the answers are something like this. You have a class called software training program, okay, where you have the attributes, code, and short descriptions as the attribute, because it's already mentioned here in the question. Then training module is the second class that you have to draw, and its attribute is name and practice time, right? It's here, module name and practice time. So what is the relationship between software training program and training modules, it is a, what's this? It's an aggregation relation. Okay, so aggregation relationship between them, and there is another relationship that you have to draw, because each module sometimes has prerequisite modules. So there is a like a unary relationship between the training module. Some are prerequisite for another module. Then you draw also the multiplicity, 1 to many, 0 to many, because it says some may have, right? Each module sometimes has a prerequisite, so it's 0 to many and 0 to 1. Okay, so that is about the class diagram. So any questions? So we have finished our topic on class diagram. Okay, the slide, we have covered all the materials. I just want to show you that I have put in the rubrics, right? Rubrics for report, rubrics for presentation, and peer evaluation. So as what we have done in PBL2, you have to complete the peer evaluation and upload it. Okay, let's talk about the due date. So actually, I was planning for you to submit this week, right? Thursday. So is it possible, or shall I extend, right? Because I think that there are a lot of groups that are still struggling with their sequence diagram. Am I right? So please respond. Okay, because if you don't respond, then I will think that you are okay with the submission of this week. No, what I meant is not this week. If you can submit this week, no problem. I can set the due date this week. But what about those groups that are still struggling? So I want those groups that are still struggling to show me what you have done today, and try to respond to me whether you need more time, right? Can you submit this week or not? Thursday. So that's the question. Because for the report rubrics, there are 4 components, and each component will be checked thoroughly. I will check the object, the actor, the object, the message, the flow, the notes, right? Even how you use the notes. So it's a very comprehensive checking, right? So you have to make sure that even for communication diagram, same thing, right? Actor, object, message, flow of event, mapping. So this is mapping with the sequence diagram, right? Is it same as the sequence diagram or not? Then for the class diagram, the mapping of the sequence diagram to the class diagram. So, and also the mapping to the use case spec. I will check also your PBL1's use case spec, right? So you have to check back all your diagrams, make sure that it exactly follows what you have written in the use case specification. Then this part is for the report. Mechanics, organization, format, spelling, grammar, and so on. Okay, so as usual, for the peer evaluation, same. And for the presentation, the rubrics are same, right? So let me check your response. You think that, okay, let's check. You said please extend, right? Okay, so I will extend the submission to next week. So this week, Thursday, we will have the quiz, and also we check also the PBL2 again for those group that did not check yet. For those group who I already checked, please do not show me again, because I have checked, I think, a few rounds. Right, so these are for the groups who are still struggling with the PBL sequence diagram. Because you still make mistakes, right? So that's why I give you some examples for you to follow. And I need to see them today. For those group that I said that you have a lot of mistakes, especially you need to show me the corrections that you have done. Okay, so I don't have anything else to say, except that I will extend the due date until. Don't forget to prepare the video, presentation video. So I will extend until next week is what, 24th, Thursday? Right, 24th. Okay. The last day to submit would be on the Thursday, 24th. Okay, including the presentation video. So due date of PBL2 would be 24th of December. If you, yes, including video, right? 24th of December is including video, the last day to submit. Because we cannot submit until weekend, most of us. We have maybe some celebrating Christmas, so we will stop at 24th as the due date for the PBL2 submission. What else? Okay, quiz, topic 3 and topic 4, right? So you will have like a UML diagrams, all the different kinds of UML diagrams, quiz about that. And also use case diagram. Okay, so I'm not I didn't prepare the questions yet, and so I don't know how would be the structure of the questions, so I can't give you that information, but most probably it will have some multiple choice questions, and I don't know how am I going to ask you to answer questions for diagrams. So I will think about that and prepare the questions soon. So topic 3 and 4, right? UML diagrams and use case diagrams. So prepare for the quiz. So now is for checking PBL2 for the groups that are still struggling. Those groups that I have checked a few rounds and you are clear with the diagrams and even the class diagram, you can leave. Leave only the groups that I need to check your sequence diagram, especially those groups that I just checked once, right? So shows what you have done. anyone who did not scan the attendance, I will share the screen for you to scan now while we wait for the groups to prepare the things that they need to show. Where is the... For the class diagram, password as an attribute is private. What about the ID? ID should be also private, no? I think ID should be also private.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
We are from the Zex Chen want to show you our class diagram.
Okay. So groups that students who already who did not scan already scan, huh? So I want to stop sharing. Those group who I already checked, you can leave. Okay.